Hello and welcome to Nancy Goodame, the Space Ranger. This is going to be chapter 27 of a total of 56. So here we go. A hen is a dog, is a tree, and away we go. The problem with a robot that has lost its purpose is that it can be unpredictable. And an unpredictable robot is never a good thing. In the afternoon of the fourth day of the first human crewed mission to another planet, Spontaliger transportation robot FZB3158 found itself without a purpose. Spontaliger transportation robot FZB3158 scanned its memory for fail-safe instructions, and when it found none, it decided that, after careful consideration, its best next move would be to destroy all living things. Such is the way with robots. Half an hour earlier, robot FZB3158 had been footing on a slow and deliberate journey transporting freshly skinned whistling Spontaligers from a shed in the roughly cleared garden below Breezy McCaspick's treehouse home at the edge of a stream in the Forest of Proverbs to the port of the Jupiterian seaside town of Cleaspabreon. It had European Space Agency mission specialist Bart McMurrow and a ladder for company. Bart and the ladder had been an unexpected and undesired addition to robot FZB3158's payload. Robot FZB3158 had considered the unexpected and undesired cargo and decided 1. The additional weight placed its total weight at 145,678 Rovalized cubitons, which was more than optimal, but still within the 10% margin of error. 2. Passenger was noisy, but otherwise benign. 3. The unexpected and undesired passenger would not affect the delivery of the Spontaligers. Stupid Jupiterians! They're such a bunch of knobs with their giant offshore stone statues to impress themselves with, said European Space Agency mission specialist Bart McMurrow. Bart was sitting on top of robot FZB3158 and looking at Sentinel-2 of the 9 Sentinels Sosman had ordered his Sosniaks to construct on the approach to Cleaspabreon Harbour. Each stone statue was carved in the likeness of Sosman Borkstapel. They depict Sosman engaged in the various activities related to leadership. The activities, when travelling inbound for Cleaspabreon, have Sosman staring importantly into the far distance, staring importantly at a piece of text on a manuscript, staring importantly at a map of the solar system, standing to attention with his head bowed slightly, sitting with his 2 arms resting on the arms of a chair, eating something resembling an apple, saluting someone in the distance, and finally, and incongruously, dressed in shorts and t-shirt and carrying a briefcase. The row of 9 stone statues were spaced roughly 500 metres apart and extended out from Cleaspabreon into the Sea of Uncertainty. Looking at the second sentinel meant land, and the harbour of Cleaspabreon was visible on the horizon, although Bart hadn't noticed. He was too busy criticising the pretentiousness of the statues. The state of that, Egypt, standing out here reading. How do the stupid Jupiterians think that's deadly? Hey lads, let's build a giant statue of some fruit reading a book and stick it in the middle of the ocean. Bunch of agents, the lot of them. That's probably the kind of thing they like doing, building statues of simpletons out in the sea. Hey, I tell you one thing, robot. I'm glad I'm not a Jupiterian. Robot FZB3158 did not reply. It had no interest in its inadvertent passenger's opinion on Jupiterians. And in any case, robot FZB3158 had its audio receptors switched off to save power. Such is the way with robots. Such a shower of flutes. Surprise, surprise. Here's another giant stone dipstick now. What's he up to now? Oh, looking at a map. Oh, the state of it. How can they think that's good? What kind of simpleton is going to come out here to the middle of the ocean to look at a stone statue of some flute reading a map? They might as well have made a statue of him pulling his plum. Nobody's going to be looking at it anyway. Do you hear what I said, robot? I said Jupiterian statues are stupid. And that means you too. What are you going to do about it? Robot FZB3158 did not reply. The only noise was robot FZB3158's propeller as it continued to foot, a course to the next stone sentinel. If robot FZB3158 had been listening and had calculated it as beneficial to reply, robot FZB3158 would have answered, nothing. Another statue. What's the big knob end doing now? Alright, standing up. How did the meeting to build that one go? Hey lads, we should make another statue to this fella, to show that he's important. Alright, so, what do we have him doing? I don't know, what does he normally do? Drink coffee and talk shite. We should make a statue of him with a mug and his mouth open. No, I have a better idea. How about him standing up? He does that sometimes. Right, so, we'll do that then. That'll go perfectly with him standing and staring at nothing. Bart stopped ranting for a brief moment and caught sight of the dark outline of a shore on the horizon. Spontalager Transportation Robot FZB3158 noted and logged its position as inbound at Sosmond Barkstapel Tribute Statue number 6. Statue number 6 depicted Sosmond Barkstapel eating a Flunticon ball, which was the ancient Jupiterian symbol for knowledge. The statue was created with the intent of displaying to Jupiterians the idea that Sosmond was extremely wise and had learned everything there is to know about Jupiter. The Sosniaks considered this to be an important thing for a statue to remind Jupiterians about. Of course, what the statue was supposed to be eating was of no consequence to Robot FZB3158. In fact, the act of ingesting food by mortals was not something Robot FZB3158 saw as relevant to Spontalager transportation, and as a result was something Robot FZB3158 had never considered. For Robot FZB3158, a 30-foot tall Sosmond Barkstapel shaped rock was simply a control point useful in navigating the route to Cleaspabreon. Such is the way with robots. "Hey, would you look at that? They have a statue of your man sitting down," muttered Bart. "Robot," he added, "next time you're chatting to the Jupiterian sculptors, tell them their statues are pure shite. From what I can see, they're all of some massive tool nobody but Jupiterians gives a fiddler's fart about. Hey lads, that dickhead did a lot of standing about. Let's make something to remind ourselves about it. What's going to be next? A statue of him scratching his arse? Oh no, wait, I see it now. They have your man eating an apple. If I ever get back to Earth and Mission Control asks, 'Hey, what was Jupiter like?' I'll tell him, 'Don't bother with the place. You get more crack out of a wet November afternoon in Bundoran.'" Bart then loudly and deliberately coughed up a mouthful of phlegm and spat it towards the statue. He had hoped that this would get a reaction from his silent metallic travelling companion, so that he could continue his moaning, but with an audience. It didn't. "Go on then, ignore me, Robot, why don't you? You probably think these statues are deadly." Cleaspabreon Harbour was now close enough not to miss. Bart stopped moaning. His attention was drawn to a long stone quay rising about a metre from the water and stretching for about 3 kilometres. 16 glassed aircraft hangar-style buildings flanking the shore, with one side open to the quay and the other open to a large dockyard. Large stone buildings dotted with small glass windows behind the quay and hangar-style buildings. And behind them, a mountain range rising sharply from directly behind the buildings. The contrast of scenery after nearly 2 days of rolling sea silenced Bart for 3 minutes and 8 seconds. In that time, Robot FZB3158 footed its way to the last of the 9 stone sentinels. It was the one depicting Sosmond Barkstapel in t-shirt and shorts and carrying a briefcase. It reminded Bart to continue moaning. "Ah, look at the state of that one. They saved the worst till last. What's that now? Heading away for the holidays or something? Surely even the Jupiterians must know that one is pointless," he said loudly. Bart would have commented on the dock scene beyond the t-shirt, shorts and briefcase sporting statue, but his breath had been taken away by what he saw in front of him. A closer inspection revealed the port to be alive with robots moving and swarming around the 16 hangars. Some were moving cargo from several open-hull boats and transferring it to the inside of the glass hangar-style buildings. Others were similar to the robot he was sitting on and were clomping into and out of the water with varying degrees of effectiveness. Several dozen grey uniformed humanoids were directing the robot's efforts. "The state of that!" announced Bart loudly. He was talking about one of the robots who had failed in its attempt to climb up the stone steps. It leaned sideways and collapsed back into the water. "Ah, Jupiterian robots are rubbish," he added. None of the uniformed Jupiterians acknowledged or responded to his rapidly formed conclusion. The magical properties of the ladder of insignificance meant that his comet went unnoticed, which was probably for the best. Robot FZB3158 propelled itself to the quay, retracted its propeller and clomped up the 3 stone steps that led to the seaward entrance to the glass arches of McAspock's Spontalager Importation Warehouse number 3. 2 of the grey uniformed Jupiterians approached brandishing clipboards and slightly disinterested expressions. Robot FZB3158 switched on its audio sensors. "FZB3158, returning from the Forest of Proverbs, full payload of Spontalagers, trip number 1688, it announced. "Lads, what the hell was that last statue supposed to be doing?" asked Bart. "Have ye gone and depicted your chief bottle washer heading away on his holidays, but still carrying a briefcase so he can keep working while he's not working? As an example to y'all of how to be. How to be a gobshite, more like," Bart answered to himself. "But sure, ye probably think that's cool," he suggested. The magical properties of the ladder of insignificance meant that his questions, answers and suggestions went unnoticed by the 2 grey uniformed Jupiterians, which was probably for the best. The 2 Jupiterians eyed Robot FZB3158, shook their heads, made marks on their clipboards, stepped back and shook their heads again. "State of those 2 dorks," noted Bart. Like, I don't care that they won't talk to me, but you're supposed to be one of their mates, and they're completely blanking you, Robot. It's the same thing the solar system over. Give a man a clipboard and a pen and he thinks he's better than everyone else. Bart then stuffed the right sleeve of his European Space Agency shirt with 3 spontalgers, stuffed the left sleeve with 2 more, and grabbed the ladder of insignificance with both hands. Right, I'm off, he said. He then leapt from the loading hatch on top of Robot FZB3158 and began walking to the landward door of McAsbug Spontalger Importation Warehouse number 3. Robot FZB3158 waited while the 2 uniformed Jupiterians concluded shaking their heads. It took them the best part of a minute. This was because they had never encountered an improperly loaded Spontalger transportation robot before and wanted to mark the occasion. Payload incomplete, said the first one. Incomplete, said the other. Don't even have to weigh this one. Sure, the cargo door was never even closed, said the first one. Tutted the other. Away with you, you're no good to us, said the first one. Yeah, away with you, Robot, agreed the other. First time I've ever seen an improperly loaded robot, said the first one. Same here, agreed the other. Robot FZB3158 considered the fact that its unexpected passenger on the journey from the Forest of Proverbs to Cleaspabreon might have ingested some of its cargo, and that its passenger has just taken a further 5 spontalgers with him, and that these 2 events placed the total cargo weight at 135,463 rovolized cumetons, which was less than optimal, which meant that Spontalger Transportation Robot FZB3158 could not register a valid delivery, and had technically failed to execute its 1,688th delivery of Spontalgers from the Forest of Proverbs to Cleaspabreon. Robot FZB3158 determined that its failure was the result of living creatures, and decided to destroy all living things. Such is the way with robots. Meanwhile, 225 million kilometres away, in the future, in a room, in a house, in Castlebar, County Mayo, an 11-year-old boy named Anthony McGinley was reading aloud to his sister. What happened to Nancy? I don't care about the robot, she said. I don't know. Anthony turned the page. The page described a townland called Cooladov. It was on another planet, and it was the middle of the afternoon. The weather was calm and mild, well, by Jupiterian standards, and European Space Agency mission specialist Nancy Goodeye McGinley was listening to a question being asked by one of the Jupiterians who had gathered to hear the tale of the dragon Blardan. Does that extraterrestrial know Chancellor Staunton or not? Asked the Jupiterian. The Jupiterian asking the question was tall, dressed in loose-fitting clothes of what looked to be coarse fabric, and had just stood up to face the still-seated Nancy, Harry and Harry's friend Offaldon. She said she does, said someone else. I wasn't asking you. Nancy McGinley had listened to a story called The Dragon Blardan at the end of chapter 26, and was now dealing with the possibility that European Space Agency mission commander Jerry Staunton was working for, or at least helping, an alien who, by all accounts, was at best malicious and power-hungry. Nancy was in the company of about 80 or so Jupiterians who had gathered by the bank of a river at the edge of a medium-sized townland known as Cooladov. She'd been brought to that place by a very elderly Jupiterian known as Harry Selden. He was sitting next to her, and next to him was an even older Jupiterian called Offaldon Glumhostavule. Nancy had been surprised to hear the words bag of shite and Chancellor Staunton at the end of the last chapter, and both these sets of words had suggested Mission Commander Jerry Staunton might not have been kidnapped, or at least in the traditional sense of the word. Then who were you asking? Snapped the Jupiterian who had just been given the I wasn't asking you declaration. Nancy could not see which of the 80 or so Jupiterians was speaking to the tall Jupiterian, but the tone was of someone unhappy with the nature of the declaration and looking for a way to escalate the conversation into an argument. I was asking Offaldon. Well, it's obvious he didn't hear you. And anyways, the way you said it sounded like you were asking anyone but him. So you needn't get so uppity about who answers you. The right thing to say would be, sorry, excuse me, I was asking someone else. And anyways, why are you asking him? He's deaf as a post. And, you're nothing but a lanky streak of piss. The tall, coarse fabric-wearing Jupiterian Inquisitor went red in the face, pretended to ignore the advice, cupped his hands to his mouth, and yelled towards the seated Offaldon. Did the extraterrestrial say she knew Chancellor Staunton? Huh? The yell and the loud ha reply attracted the attention of most of the crowd of about 80 or so Jupiterians. Several of them stood up and gathered in a circle around where Harry, Nancy and Offaldon were sitting. Why are you asking that fella? Sure, he knows nothing. I bet he couldn't hear half of what went on during the story of the Dragon Blardan, asked someone in the crowd. Well, who else am I going to ask? replied the lanky, red-faced, coarse-clothed inquisitor. The Dragon Barden was great! A complete bag of shite! Offered Offaldon as a reply. Not the Dragon Barden, Offaldon, you deaf git. The extraterrestrial. The woman next to you. The one who came along with your new buddy to watch the show. Huh? Replied Offaldon. Did this one next to you say she knows Chancellor Staunton? She's right here if you want to ask her, and her name is Nancy. And she just said she thinks she knows him, interrupted Harry. Why don't you speak to her yourself? The coarse fabric-wearing, tall humanoid Jupiterian Inquisitor went even redder in the face, muttered something about, I don't trust extraterrestrials, and walked away angrily. Well, in a sort of walk. It involved sidestepping some of the crowd who were still seated, which meant it was more of an angry sideways shuffle. Huh? Asked Offaldon. I need to get to Chancellor Staunton, said Nancy. Chancellor Staunton lives and works in the Grand Glompository in Salzman City. No Kuldaffian has ever set foot in there. In fact, no Bondrosnian has ever set foot in there either. Everyone knows that. Hey, it's easy knowing you're an extraterrestrial, said a small fat female Jupiterian in a ragged red tracksuit. She was standing about 5 metres away and must have been expecting a laugh or a sneer from her statement, because she added an "eh?" prompt when nobody reacted. Mockler Buldaffa was in the Glompository. Remember, they brought him there when he started telling everyone's husband Barksapple wasn't real, replied someone else. A single hobobolous spline trickled out from the side of the barrel wagon and displayed its peripheral tendrils. It was enough to attract the attention of the entire crowd, who turned to face the wagon. Whoosh! Said someone. If Nancy wants, she can take a lift to Bondrosna. They have a port there, with rockets that leave for Hobblegraniker. Graven Habonding knows the way. He can guide the wagon, came the voice of the Geronimous Flomp. The voice echoed from within the wagon, but the tendrils swayed as it spoke, and then retracted back into the wagon. Flomp, Hobblegraniker is called Salzman City now, advised someone in the crowd. Yes, agreed the voice, and that is important to some, but not for anyone here. Graven, bring Nancy over to the wagon. We should leave soon. Bondrosna is a good distance, and it is not wise to be up in the Naofin Hills after it gets dark. Well, there you go, said someone. The Flomp has spoken. Where's Graven? He's taking a piss over by the river, said someone else. Graven, when you're done, will you come over here? The Geronimous Flomp wants you to guide the Flomp wagon across the Naofin Hills to Bondrosna before it gets dark, so an extraterrestrial can catch a rocket to Salzman City. She's sitting over here with 2 old farts and a crossbow. Wash your hands first, though, will you? Graven is a fantastic navigator, but he has no concept of personal hygiene, whispered by the small, red tracksuited Jupiterian. Don't tell him I said that, though, she added. Don't tell the Bondrosnians we piss in the river either, said a voice in the crowd. This prompted a ripple of laughter through the crowd of 80 or so, now mostly standing Jupiterians. Stupid Bondrosnians, said someone, who then followed it with, Here's Graven now. A medium-height, very skinny Jupiterian humanoid pushed its way through the crowd as far as where Harry and Offaldon were seated. Nancy had already stood up before the skinny Jupiterian arrived. That's her there, said someone. Right, said the skinny Jupiterian. So, the Flomp wants me to take this one and the wagon to Bondrosna. Did you wash your hands? Asked someone. Wash my hands? Do you know nothing? If the Geronimous Flomp for an imaginary story about Jupiter asked you to take a confused extraterrestrial on a barrel wagon trip through the Naofin Hills to Bondrosna, then there is no time for hand washing. Come on, Nancy, follow me. You hop in the back with the Flomp. I'll charge up the Aldernon Drive. The medium-height, skinny Jupiterian called Graven Habondon turned and walked over to the barrel wagon. He gestured to the door at the end. It was still open from where the hobobolous spline had opened it. Hop in, he said. Graven then walked to the other end of the wagon and climbed up onto a small seat about 2 metres above the ground facing away from the body of the wagon. This meant Graven was perched almost at the roof of the wagon in the same position he would have been if he lived on Earth and was driving a wagon and it was being pulled by draft animals. Graven reached inside a pocket inside his grey shirt, pulled out a tiny black cloth bag, opened it, pinched a crystal between his thumb and forefinger and placed it into a small metal slot at the edge of the wagon roof. Nancy somehow knew that this was an Aldernon crystal fragment, a small sample of the same mineral that she had seen inside the Jupiterian rocket ship in Chapter 7. She also somehow knew that this meant the wagon was about to leave, and that she should be on it when it did. Thank you, Harry, she said to her elderly, former noob companion. Huh? Asked Offaldon. She wasn't talking to you, explained Harry. Bag of shite, said Offaldon. And with that, Nancy walked through the crowd to the open door of the Geronimous Flomp's barrel wagon and climbed inside. And what she saw was a neat stove, a basin and arrangement of cooking utensils against one wall, a low bed of cushions and blankets against the other, The door behind her, the Geronimous Flomp slumbled underneath an open window at the far end of the wagon, and the arse of Gravin Habonding seated on a high bench just outside the window, who turned around and stuck his head in the window before saying, "Bondrosna Flomp, yeah? Across the Nathan Hills, yeah? With the extraterrestrial on board, yeah?" "Harumph," replied the Geronimous Flomp. "Fair enough, so." Gavin turned around and pressed on the Aldenon crystal fragment, and the wagon began moving. Nancy closed the door behind her and sat on the blankets. The wagon rattled surprisingly quickly along the large steel-tired wooden spoked wheels. The only window was a large semicircle made of glass to the front. It was split in two by a hinged wooden frame that opened downwards into the wagon, and one half was open. The open half window showed half of Gavin Habondon's arse and the tops of buildings passing by. The buildings were soon gone and replaced by purple vegetation and trees and rock slopes. Nancy could hear the frame of the wagon strain as it moved uphill. "So you're from Earth, Nancy," said the Geronimous Flomp. Nancy could not make out any recognisable expression on the large wobbly face of the Geronimous Flomp. It did not appear to be looking at anything in particular either. Nancy paused before replying. "Yes," she said. "I wasn't asking," replied the Flomp. "Do you know that you're being watched?" "No," replied Nancy. "Well, you are, and by young eyes. 2 pairs of them." Nancy glanced around the inside of the wagon and then out the window. The tree cover was sparse, and the landscape, at least what she could see of it, was mostly rock. It was also getting colder. I don't see anyone." "You won't. Not till it's time. But the thing about time is that the things in it are always getting closer. Just know that they're there." "Don't mind the Flomp, Spacer," shouted Gravin from outside the window. "That thing is daft as a brush." He turned around and stuck his head in the window. "No offence, Flomp," he said, "but you're full of shit. Not like me, Spacer. I see real things when I'm out on the roads. Things an extraterrestrial would probably never even dream of." Shouldn't you be watching the road right now?" asked Nancy. "Yes," said Gravin. He stuck his head back out of the window so only his arse was visible once more, and then continued talking. "Things like the Phalontacon." "The what?" asked Nancy. "Harumph," said the Geronimous Flomp. "The Phalontacon," repeated Gravin. "The most vicious creature ever to walk the roads of Jupiter. It was in these very hills too, on a day not unlike this one, on a road not unlike this, and it was something I'll never forget. I was part of a train of 3 wagons, carrying Romblow flesh and spanners to Gartrick. Hondo Gebadonding was in the first wagon, and Blanc Flannery was in the second, and I was driving the third." "Harumph," said the Geronimous Flomp. "Don't mind that thing, extraterrestrial. It's only grumpy because this is a real story." "Harumph," said the Geronimous Flomp for a third time. "Anyways, listen to this, extraterrestrial." Nancy. "Listen to this, extraterrestrial, Nancy. Hatching, hatching, hatching. That is the noise of the Phalontacon. Not many people know that because not many people have heard it and lived to tell the tale. But I'm one, and it was like the thing just walked out of the rock. I'm telling you now, we've been making our way up one of those windy roads that the Nathan Hills are famous for. A lot like this one, actually. And Hondo's wagon suddenly just stopped. So anyways, myself and Blanc jumped down from ours to see what the hold-up was, and there in front of us was this massive clawed creature. I'm not afraid to say it, but that was the most scared I've ever been. I literally shit and pissed myself on the spot, and it wasn't just the way the thing looked that scared me, it was the ha-ching, ha-ching, ha-ching sound that was echoing against the rocky slopes and all around poor old Honda. Only a part of his bloody torso was left. I can't be sure, but it might have been his spleen. In any case, it was the only part of Hondo that the Phalontacon hadn't devoured. Nancy glanced out of the window and looked to the left and right of Gravin. They were now in some sort of rocky gully. The wagon continued to rattle upwards. "How did you get away?" she asked. "Skill and a spinning kick to the creature's clawed head." "Harumph," snorted the Geronimous Flomp. "I'm not lying to you," continued Gravin. "I'm actually a deadly fighter, and I hit the Phalontacon with everything I had. Slaps, kicks, headbutts. After about 10 minutes, it had enough and just walked back into the rock. Bit mad, huh?" "Harumph." "It's true. Ask Blanc if you want." "No, wait, don't. He was hiding under his wagon for that bit. Anyways, I don't think that Phalontacon will be bothering anyone ever again." "Harumph," said the Geronimous Flomp. "The name of the creature you are describing is a cantabular glimp, not a Phalontacon. And it goes clack, clack, clack. Not ha-ching, ha-ching, ha-ching. And you would know if you had ever heard one. Don't heed Gravin, Nancy. Like all Culdoffians, he talks pure bollocks. But he is from round here, so some of what he said might be true. So maybe keep your ears open, just to be on the safe side. Now, I'm going for a kip, so the two of ye be quiet." Nancy nodded. Something told her that what the Flomp had said was both true and good advice. She listened carefully as the wagon trundled on. For some time all she could hear was the wagon creaking as it strained against the gradient, the steel wheels cracking as they rolled along what sounded like a path, the noisy snoring and flumping of the Geronimous Flomp. And then it started. A low, distant clack, clack, clack. Gravin is loud, and the Flomp is slow. If I run now, I can save myself, she thought. And in another life she might have. But not now, not with colleagues to rescue, and possibly a kidnapped mission commander in the middle of the afternoon on Jupiter. Nancy instinctively reached for and armed her crossbow. Something told her to be ready for chapter 28. And that was it for the afternoon of the 4th day of the first human expedition to another planet. European Space Agency mission specialist Bart McMorrow and the ladder of insignificance wandering through the streets of a settlement called Cleaspabreon, a Martian sheriff and his underground army of sorts. European Space Agency mission specialist Nancy Goodame McGinley, European Space Agency mission commander / Jupiterian Chancellor Jerry Staunton, a cantabular glimp, the last copy of the Book of Bongerlon adrift on the Sea of Uncertainty, and a crossbow. Alright, fair play. Thank you again if you've been listening to that. I appreciate it. And it's now, I'd say, a couple of weeks before Christmas. So there'll be one more before Christmas and then a short break. And then it's time to get into the fast action stuff for the big rundown to hopefully an audio drama finale in the summer of 24. So thanks again and chat to you next time.